All right, jumping over into Spider-Man Far From Home, billions or bust. I'm not even making this up. A new report is coming out today talking about the deal for Spider-Man's future in the MCU all hinges on whether or not Spider-Man Far From Home cracks the big triple or the 9 zeros, right? Whether or not it hits a billion. I wish I was making this up because you figure it's just insane, but it shows you Amy Pascal and exactly what she's up to. But anyway, it says here, if Spider-Man Far From Home doesn't make a billion, Sony breaks free of the Marvel Studios deal. Yeah, think about that one, right? Everyone's waiting right now for next week, next Saturday. So a week from this Saturday is the 90-minute Marvel Studios Comic-Con panel at in Hall H, and everyone's waiting to see what's going to be happening next. Well, what are we going to see off of this? What are they going to announce in those 90 minutes? Clearly 90 minutes is going to be a lot of content. A lot of good things are going to be happening, and I will definitely be there. But that being said, when you look at the concept of what's going on here, when you look at the idea of Sony having Marvel over a barrel about whether or not Spider-Man hits a billion and whether or not they continue the deal is pure Hollywood. And it's actually kind of scummy, if you want my honest opinion. Spider-Man has been revitalized under the Marvel Cinematic Universe to the point of where he is as synonymous with the Avengers as I think anyone else is right now. And Far From Home is not only a great movie, it's a great closeout to Phase 3 and definitely one that is worthy of the money that it's getting. But holding it to $1 billion standard almost feels impossible, because the first one only did 880 million. Yeah, a mere $120 million shy from hitting that mark. And this one does have the slingshot effect of coming off of after Endgame, which helped propel it to $1 billion. Same with Captain Marvel. Anyway, so it says here, the specifics of major Hollywood contracts are notoriously difficult to ascertain, and the occasional insights we do receive often come from actors revealing how many movies they have left in a particular franchise. But a new report has uncovered that Spider-Man contract stipulation would allow Sony to wriggle out of its deal with Marvel Studios and once again give Spidey's original studio home full autonomy over the character's cinematic adventures. Good thing that won't happen. And I absolutely agree. Amy Pascal and Avi Arad got lucky with Venom. They did. Ruben Fleischer, Tom Hardy really delivered on the movie for what I feel that the script allowed them to deliver on. And if you go back and you watch Venom again and you look at it from the perspective as being more of a dark comedy, those elements really work. And the movie surprisingly has a fair amount of heart in it. I was surprised. I'm not lying. I was really surprised at how much I enjoyed Venom when you look at those aspects. So Venom 2 is playing up the dark comedy parts of it because they know that's what worked really well. But at the same time, they got lucky. And I have talked about that before, but I really do believe it. Anyway, in a recent edition of journalist Richard Rushfeld's entertainment newsletter, The Ankler, Rushfeld peels back the secretive curtain on the deal that was signed between Sony and Marvel back in 2015 to share the character, saying here that the original Sony-Marvel Spidey deal to co-produce these films stipulated that if Spidey cleared $1 billion, Marvel would get to oversee a third. If it hadn't, full control would have then reverted back to Sony. The thing with that, though, is, I mean, it makes sense that's the deal that Pascal would broker for herself on her way out the door. We all know Amy Pascal was on her way out when this deal was brokered. That was her saving grace for not only her legacy, her career, but everything else. And she knew where the money was, and that's clearly with Marvel. Like I've said before, I believe that Amy Pascal was a bit of a Marvel sleeper agent over at Universal, which is why I think we're going to find some new and interesting deals from that coming out in the next year or so. But really, that makes a lot of sense, where it's like, look, Spider-Man should have already hit $1 billion with the other movies that it put out, especially Spider-Man 1 and Spider-Man 2 from back in 2002 and 2004, respectively. I mean, number 3 is up for debate on how much it should have earned. I still think it was not as bad as many people give it credit for. And The Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, I thought were just fine. Yeah, we can discuss that one at a later date, but I did enjoy those quite a bit. But if you look at Into the Spider-Verse, where that almost crashed, that didn't do very well. And a lot of that had to do, and the people are going to give me crap for this one, but it's true, it didn't do well because it starred Miles Morales. It won Best Picture at the Oscars for the animated category, which is true. It is the best animated film of last year, and it's an amazing movie with an amazing characterization of Miles, but it didn't sit well with the general audiences. audiences. Even Spider-Man Homecoming failed to hit as big as people thought it was going to hit when that came out in 2017. I think at the time people weren't too sure what to think of it because it felt so different. I rewatched Homecoming before going and seeing Far From Home, and especially coming off of Endgame, you can see that there was a lot of love put into Homecoming, and a lot of what built off of the Infinity War and Endgame choices that Tony Stark made ultimately was beginning there, and we get a lot of that there, and I think it worked out real well, especially if you kind of associate it with the scene of Tony meeting his father in Endgame and how that whole thing kind of played out. There's a bit of Tony and Peter in that, not just Tony and Morgan. So there's things like there to consider. But anyway, the overall arc of the character, which has already been pre-designed and pre-created leading up to this point, makes a lot of sense as to why now it's on track to earn $1 billion. But anyway, the article does go on here to say that, to be clear, Far From Home has not yet crossed the $1 billion mark at the worldwide box office, but the fact is that it's already made over $600 million in its first week. It's practically a guarantee that it will cross the coveted $1 billion threshold before it leaves theaters. So the Sony Marvel Studios deal will still hold, at least for one more solo Spider-Man movie, because Tom Holland revealed back in 2016 that he was on board for 3 Spider-Man films and 3 appearances in other MCU movies, like Civil War, Homecoming, Avengers Infinity War, Avengers Endgame, and Spider-Man Far From Home. And that does make a fair amount of sense in regards to that, right? That, you know, he's got one more solo movie in him. If you've seen the movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about and why that needs to happen. But it's been a week. It's made $600 million. People think it's going to hit $1 billion, but it is up against Lion King next week, or I think at the end of the month. And so Lion King is going to swallow everything that's going to be coming out right around that time. And anything that comes out after that's going to be swallowed up by Lion King. And it's possible that Far From Home may not hit that coveted amount. It's entirely possible. It's done super well so far, and I'm sure it will continue to make a lot of money. It is worthy of the cash. But if it doesn't hit that $1 billion, I'm going to chalk it up to Disney once again screwing themselves by releasing too many things too quickly together. It's just how they tend to do things these days, and that is unfortunate. But I do hope that it makes it. I hope that the deal holds for at least one more movie, and I do hope that Pascal is able to fully work the deal in order to then bring in everybody that Sony has into the MCU, and yes, by that I mean Venom.